What's going on YouTube? Luke Forsyth here and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look at something that's pretty fun, a topic that everyone loves, how to make money. Before we start, let's take a second and just clarify the difference between being a documentary filmmaker and what I mean when I talk about working in the documentary industry. You don't need anyone's permission to be a documentary filmmaker. You can get a camera, and as long as you have a story, you can make a documentary about anything. It can be about your family, your friends, or something hyper-local in your own community. No one can stop you from telling that story, and thanks to the internet, you can share that story with anyone. That's all you need to be a documentary filmmaker. Those kinds of projects are amazing, and they're the backbone of what it means to be a documentarian. But there's a big difference between that and working on a big budget documentary, the kind that you might see streaming on Netflix or Amazon or wherever. Most of the really big documentaries that you see online or on TV are made by large teams of people. They cost a ton of money and you have a lot of really talented people working together to pull it off. Often the funding comes from production companies rather than out of your own pocket. Everyone should pursue passion projects. I fully support that. But it's very hard to support yourself from them, and everybody needs to make money. The good news is that there are a ton of jobs out there. You don't have to work at McDonald's or Walmart or something that you hate doing in order to stay in the documentary space. You might not be always working on your own projects all the time, but that's okay. Sometimes it's nice to work on someone else's project and get paid for it. You can learn a ton about the documentary process. You can meet a lot of really talented people who you might end up working with later on in your career. And in general, it's just a great job for someone who wants to make their own documentaries. I'm a cinematographer. Most of the projects that I work on, I'm not involved in the planning or writing or editing of. I come in when the idea's already been formed and the project has been green-lit, and my job is to make it as visually beautiful as I can. I work really closely with directors and producers and sound guys and the whole team, and because of that, I learn a lot about the process. So while I was putting together a pitch for my own documentary this year, I had a much better idea of what it might take to get a project like this off the ground. If I had just spent my whole career working in a bubble of trying only to get my own projects launched, I might never have had access to these people or have learned what goes into this really complex process of getting a documentary actually made. So unless you want to just release all of your projects independently on YouTube, which is great, please do that if that's your thing. But if you're trying to support yourself by being a documentarian in the long run, I think it's a really great idea to consider getting a job on a high budget doc. What I've learned over the course of my career is that there are things you can do to be proactive and put yourself in a good position to get a job in the doc industry. The first one, which might sound super obvious, is to practice. Now, I'm a cinematographer or a DP. That doesn't mean that you have to be as well. There are a ton of other jobs you can do on a documentary crew. There's producers, there's the director, there's the sound guy, there's production assistants, there's fixers, camera assistants. There are a bunch of opportunities. Nowadays, it's just expected that you're really good at what you do. There's no way around it. If you're not good, no one's gonna hire you. There are a ton of good shooters out there, and if you want to be a DP like I am, the only way that you're going to improve is by practicing. When I was starting out in photography, my mentor told me that out there in the world, there are millions and millions of people who spend 40, 50, 60, 80 hours a week working jobs that they hate. Now, if you want to have a job that you love, you need to be willing to put in at least that amount of time, if not more. So let's say you want to be a DP like I am. The best thing you can do for yourself is shoot as much as possible. It could be stills, it could be video, but just go out and shoot. The same is true for all other jobs on a doc crew. The director might have started as a PA or a line producer, and the field producer might have started as a production manager back in the office before they were ever allowed into the field. All of those jobs required people to learn skills that they practiced, so that when opportunities came their way, they were ready to act. The worst thing that could happen is that someone offers you a job that you're not capable of doing because you haven't practiced enough. Let's say Netflix calls you tomorrow and asks you if you can come out and shoot their next big feature documentary. That might sound amazing, but if you haven't practiced and practiced and practiced to the point where shooting is second nature to you, you're gonna fall short, and that will do a lot more damage to your reputation than if you had never taken the job to begin with. So just get out there and shoot so that when the time comes, you're ready. So something else you have to do while you're trying to get your foot in the door is networking. There's no way around it. It might not be glamorous or sexy or fun, but networking is so important. The truth is that people want to work with people that they like. If possible, they want to work with their friends. This is where networking comes into play. If you can get your name on other people's radars, it makes their job easier for them. Let me give you an example from my career. I lived in Mexico for 4 years before moving home to Canada, and at least twice a year, I would save up and spend a week in New York City doing nothing but meetings. I didn't like it. It wasn't fun. Showing up at strangers' offices and trying to sell yourself is, let's face it, embarrassing. But just because it's not fun doesn't mean it's not important. You don't have to be some snake oil salesman, pitching people and making false promises. All you need to do is get on their radar. At first, I thought I was wasting my money. The first 2 trips I made to New York, nothing happened for at least 6 months. But now, looking back, I can directly trace each of those trips to jobs that made me back way more money than I spent on the trips themselves. All you really need to be successful are a handful of clients who come back to you over and over and over again. Of all the really big budget, interesting projects I've worked on, probably 80% of them originate from the same 5 people. You don't need a huge network, you just need a dedicated network. So wherever it is that you live in the world, find out who is making the projects that you want to work on and try and meet them. Just be yourself. Be cool, be friendly, tell them what you want, and then follow up a few weeks later politely. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to send them 10 emails a day. Just remind them every once in a while who you are and what you do, and eventually something will come up and you'll be in. Then once you've got the first job out of the way, the next time you do a networking trip, you go back and visit the same people that you worked with, and instead of having to sell yourself as a stranger, you're just catching up as a colleague. Then your network starts to get really strong. Let me just say that you do not need to live in New York City. I've never lived in New York or LA or any of the major documentary centers. I'm Canadian and I almost never work for Canadian clients. I spent almost 10 years in Asia and 4 years in Mexico, yet almost everyone I work with is in New York. How did I do that? Because I identified those people as the ones I wanted to work with, and I kept going back to see them over and over and over again. At the time, it sucked spending that money, but now those trips are the foundation for my whole career. One mistake that I see a lot of people make is that they only reach out to the people who have the jobs that they want. So to put that another way, if you want to be a DP, don't just reach out to other DPs. They might be super cool people that you want to get to know, but they will almost never give you a job. Actually, they're going to be your competition in the future. So if you actually want to get a job in the industry, find the people who do the hiring, not just the people whose job you want to have. Usually the person you want to talk to is a production manager. These are the people who are told, hey, we need a shooter in Mexico for these dates, now go find someone. These people might not have a clue who they're trying to hire, and they just want to find someone reliable so that their job is done. Be that person. Get yourself on their radar so that when the time comes for them to find a crew in a place where they've never worked before, your name comes to mind. Between photography and documentaries, I've been making visuals full-time for over 10 years, and I'm still nowhere close to where I want to be. There is no way to cheat the process. To get anywhere that's worth getting to, it takes a lot of time. Be patient. Creativity goes in cycles. There's going to be ups and downs, but you have to stick with it. You can do this. This is the golden age of documentary, and there are more opportunities now than there have ever been in the past. By staying involved in the industry, you can learn from some really great people while getting paid at the same time. You'll grow your network of contacts so that when you have a great idea, you know who to pitch them to. Working in the industry and being a filmmaker might not be the same thing, but there's things that you can take from your job that will make you the best filmmaker that you can be.